Chapter 6. I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man. The next morning, Ace wandered into Joystown's Market Square, having hitched a lift with Cathland. The big man had ridden into town to barter, and Ace had joined his company on the ride as he told riddles and sang obscene songs. The air was clear and tasty, and Ace began to whistle to herself as she walked, despite what had happened to Christopher. It was hard, she thought, to feel bad in these circumstances. That was bad, really. Maybe Christopher would have liked it like that, but maybe he wouldn't. She'd kissed Jen goodbye this morning, saying she'd see him later in the day. His smile was so big, and so it would be, that Ace hoped he wouldn't fall back into sorrow today. At least maybe he'd avoid this big complex about sacrifice and just basically miss his old friend. Jen had said good things, and told her that she was the most wonderful lover he'd ever had. Yeah, she could believe that, for once. It would be cool to see the doctor again now, to hug him, and to show him that she could wander off, be herself, and then come back to be his mate too. In a corner of the market square, 3 children were poking at something with a stick. They were jumping back and squealing at it. Ace wandered over, full of the joys of autumn. It wasn't so long since she'd been playing games like that. The 2 boys and a girl looked up at her, scared, but she squatted down and peered at the muddy corner, grinning. "What you got?" "It's a monster!" the girl whispered, and used a twig to hitch aside a leaf. Under the leaf twitched one of the tiny white fibers like Benny had caught in her jar. It jerked and tried to get under the leaf again, not liking the bright low sun. The children squealed. Ace frowned. "That was great. Can I keep it?" "No," the little girl complained. "It's ours." Ace reached into her backpack, finding an empty Nitro 9 flask and, well, what would kids here like? Her hand chanced upon something she'd always meant to get rid of, but never had. "Swap you it for this?" she asked, flicking the yo-yo along the ground and spinning it back into her hand. Good that she could still do that. It had taken 2 weeks and tons of peer pressure to learn it. "Yeah!" gasped the girl, and the children began to fight over the toy. Ace bent down to scoop the creature into the flask with the twig. She crushed a vaguely irritated thought that the doctor better appreciate the thing. She could buy a yo-yo anywhere, couldn't she? The doctor was pacing his room in intense concentration. His fingers were describing a complex pattern, like a musician composing a symphony. He'd booked into the inn late last night, Benny heading back to the dig. It had taken him an hour to convince her that he'd be perfectly safe, and it had taken an intimidation that her own crew might be in danger to send her away. There was a knock at the door. The doctor stopped his pacing and pulled it quickly open without answering the knock. Ace stood there, holding a Nitro 9 flask. "Present," she said, throwing it onto the bed. The doctor flinched. Ace grinned. "Got you," she said, and wandered into the room. "Where were you last night?" the doctor asked. Ace ran a hand over her hair as she plopped down in a chair, wondering why this felt so odd. Then she got it. The question sounded like something her mum might have asked. She smiled up at the doctor, but found that he was looking deadly serious. "Wandered about a bit. Went and saw the travellers." "Yes." The doctor closed the door. "I thought so." "We went into Pewter's place, and... Listen, something really bad's going on." She told the doctor about Christopher's death. The Time Lord's expression grew darker as he listened. He shook his head. "He might have been killed. Travellers don't know the technology. Only ever just enough for anything. They fly their ships from the manual. They fly off other people. They cause more misery and suffering than—" "Wait a minute!" Ace stood up and put a hand on the doctor's lapel. "You knew there was something going on, right? You didn't tell me what it was." "Well, okay. The Zargoids are here. How do I know what's safe and what isn't?" "You could have stayed with me." "Yeah, right. That's usually the safest place to be, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" "I'm supposed to be on your side, not blundering into stuff like this, 'cause you don't want to tell me about it. I'm Ace, remember?" "Oh, I remember." The doctor was looking at her with a distracted air. "That boy, the one I saved. You haven't mentioned him. Was he there?" "Yeah." Ace glanced down at her boots. "Crashed in his tent." "I don't think you should go back." The doctor had turned aside, and Ace couldn't see the expression on his face, but his tone was deceptively mild. It was the first time the Time Lord had ever sounded like a parent to Ace. Previously, his love had been like a friend's was, without all the blackmail bullshit. "You what?" "It might be dangerous. You don't know the people. All sorts of reasons." He was muttering, trying to stop what he'd started. Ace paused. She'd sounded something really deep inside him. She put a hand on his, and a moment later, as if considering the action, he held it. "Give us a better reason, eh?" she asked. "No, I was wrong. Forget I said it." After a moment, he finally turned to look at her. The doctor's face betrayed no emotion. "Sorry," he muttered. "You're free. You can do what you want." "I want to stay with you." It had come out more directly than she wanted. She didn't want to hear an answer. "Just tell me what's going on." "I don't know myself. Not yet." "So, Why don't you look at the thing in the flask? As if sensing that Ace wanted to change the subject, the doctor picked up the container and unscrewed it, throwing the contents onto the table. Where did you find it? He asked, bending closer to the surface. The market square. Some kids had it. The doctor took a probe from his pocket and inspected the twitching filament. He flicked a control on the probe, and a tiny burst of laser light killed the thing. Hey, murmured Ace. It's all right, the doctor said, lifting it with tweezers. It's part of a group organism. You can't kill the whole thing by switching off one of its parts. It's a fungal spore. What, like a mushroom seed? Yes, but alien. I've seen something like it before, long ago. But the structure seems different. I must take this back to the TARDIS lab. You were going to talk to the librarian, weren't you? Yeah. Ace had been watching the doctor engrossed in his work. It was like he'd clicked back into being him. Whatever his problem with Jan was, the doctor she was used to was back again. I need to find the papers of Felsakar, urgently. I found a piece of paper last night. I can't read it. I thought you could read anything. No, I can only understand speech. Words on paper don't have minds that you can read. So, I need another key. Perhaps you could have a word. Ask Trench if he knows where the book went. Sure. Ace went to the door. The doctor was still bending over the spore. I'll be off then. Ace glanced at the doctor worriedly. Yes. The doctor heard the door close behind him. Then he slowly lowered the spore to the table. He leaned on the chair, and his face creased into an expression of pain. Operative Miller frowned at the man standing in front of his desk. What happened to you? Cale cradled his arm in its sling, glaring at his superior. Creatures, sir. Horrible things. I took a routine patrol out into the Forest of Arden. I wandered off, saw what I thought was a campfire. I'm reading between the lines, Cale. This huge thing came at me out of the dark, smashed my arm. It was all dressed in black, had a helmet on. I dropped my weapon. I had to, and I ran. I made it back to the patrol, and we came in straight away. Miller stood, angrily. Why did nobody wake me? I was in the medical bay, sir. I'd ordered the patrol to stand down. I must have been in a daze. So, what's new, lad? Miller punched a communicator control. Security state yellow. I want a general notice sent out to all ships in the equatorial docks to report anything strange. Miller closed the link. Cale raised his free arm. The orbital platform, sir. Yes. I was just thinking about that. We better warn them. Miller scratched his chin. Every colony had a small orbiting space station, a place where incoming ships could drop cargo without having to make planetfall. Heaven was no exception. The crew of the platform were particularly vulnerable to any form of spaceborne attack. What I was going to say, sir... Well, I've not been a very good soldier. True. That bastard could have killed me, sir. I want a piece of it. I'm in no condition to fight, but I specialized in scanner work when I was training with the mining corporation. I could take a shuttle up there, put the whole planet through a scanner sweep, the data from which might be of huge commercial value. Yes, sir. Cale's glance flared across the superior's face, sizing him up. But, on the other hand, it would show up anything unusual on the surface of heaven. It would be useful to both of us. Miller inwardly winced. He never got used to this sort of compromise, but he was going to need the troopers' loyalty soon, and Cale always had their ear. Very well. Keep me informed. Yes, sir. Cale saluted and exited. Miller nodded, slowly. He'd have to tell the doctor about this. He punched another control. Judith, he ordered. Find me everything we've got on file about the Sontarans. Why did everything always have to get complicated? Ace stamped up the steps to the library, angry. She felt guilty, damn it. That was the first time the doctor had come on like a parent, giving his love all sorts of conditions. Was he jealous? It wasn't as if Jan was any threat to him. She stepped inside the library building and made her way quickly past the security system in the same way the doctor had last time. It was just a code to punch into a keyboard, not hard to break. Mind you, on this planet, who was there to break it? As soon as she was inside the vaulted hall, she heard singing. A sad old song, the words too low for her to hear. Ace recognized the voice as that of Trench, the old librarian. She made her way through the shelves until she found him. The old man was taking documents from a shelf onto a small cart, the kind that was used for loading spaceships. The cart was already piled high with manuscripts. Hi! Ace stepped forward. Trench jumped and looked round quickly. He put a hand on his chest. Oh, hello. You scared me. Sorry, didn't mean to. What you doing? Oh, Trench glanced between the cart and the shelves. Just taking some of the stock into storage. I expected you to knock, you know. This was supposed to be a secure area. Ace squatted down by the cart and read some of the titles on the documents. Poetry, she murmured. And novels. A manuscript of the bell jar. Yeah, I read this when I was 14. But it has been banned for decades. Can't see why. No. A smile spread across Trench's face. Neither can I. Would you, like a cup of chocolate? Jan was clearing out Christopher's tent, folding and packing things into crates. Nothing could be wasted, but anything that was special to Christopher would be preserved in a small collection of memories that Moira kept. That was the trouble. Jan couldn't think of one thing that Christopher would have kept. Rosha entered and stopped. I didn't expect to find you here, she murmured. No. Jan sat down and looked up at her. Forgive me, Rosha. I never meant to hurt you. Rosha sat beside him and quickly stroked his hair. I love you. It hurt to find you with Ace. It's always hurt with every one of them. I'm sorry. If I could offer you my hand, Things have changed now. I want you to be happy with Ace. You should take her and leave here quickly. Jan, if you only knew what I know. And what's that? Can't you tell Moira? No. Hold me for a while, can you? Always. The couple embraced with an old ease. I don't know if she wants me, Jan said. She might be on her way again soon, and whatever happens with her, I can't lose sight of you, lass. Rosha closed her eyes tightly. You'll have to, she whispered. There was a cough from the door. The doctor stood there, glaring down at Jan. Doctor! Jan jumped up, pulling Rosha after him. Rosha, this man saved my life in the market square. He turned to the Time Lord. You must meet the rest of the tribe, Doctor. Ace has told me all about you. I'm sure. Rosha nodded to the Time Lord, staring at his face with intense interest. Thank you for saving Jan's life, she said. I've come to talk to you. The doctor turned to Jan. Well, I'll leave you alone. Rosha left the tent. As she opened the flap, Jan glimpsed the unusual shape of a police box near the ashes of the fire. So, Doctor, please have some meat at my tent. No. The doctor sat down, crossing his legs. We must talk. Tell me, what's your definition of love? Jan looked around the tent, perplexed. I don't know. I know I feel it. It's caring, isn't it? Making sure that people you love don't come to harm. Now, if you had asked Christopher, should you make sacrifices for love? If staying would hurt the one you love, then I'd go, Jan said firmly, staring into the Time Lord's eyes. Do you know something I don't? Many things. The doctor paused, unsure. But nothing urgent. He seemed to make a decision, and stood up. I'm glad we talked. Jan stood also, laughing and shaking his head. Well, I have no idea what we just talked about. There's something you should know, though. He took a pace closer to the doctor, his face serious. I care about what happens to Ace. By God, I care about her. Yes. The doctor closed his eyes and put a hand gently on Jan's shoulder. I believe you. So do I. You've just made my job so much more dangerous. What is your job? Waking this world from the nightmare of its history. The doctor glanced around the tent, businesslike again. You have a pewter space deck. I need to use it. Of course, Jan laughed, leading the doctor outside. But you'd best be careful. There are things in pewter space these days. I know, muttered the doctor, shading his eyes against the morning sun. I know all too well. I'd hoped to meet them there. He looked at Jan again, and the traveler saw desperate pity in his eyes. But now I have to try. You were saving those volumes. Ace blew the steam off her cup of chocolate, getting them ready for transport. Why? Trench shook his head quickly. No. Why, what is there to save them from? They're just literature, as you said. No value in them. Of course there is. They're originals. I forget that not everybody thinks like a soldier. The two of them had set up a makeshift table on a crate. Trench and Ace had talked for ages about poetry. Now Ace felt that it was time to get to the point. Do you know where the papers of Felsikov got to? She asked. It's important. No, I have no idea, Trench said quickly, glancing upwards. The volume simply went missing. I think it must have been stolen. Yeah, the place was bugged. Want to take a walk outside? No, I must get on with my work. There's no time to waste. Yes, there is. What's the hurry? You must understand. Trench reached out and held Ace's hand. The poor man was shaking. I am an old man. I have to finish my business, my vast job here, before I die. That's not going to be for years, Ace smiled, but I'll let you get on with it. She stood up. You know what I hate? What? Bullies. Me and the doctor find them and bully them back. It sometimes takes a while, but eventually... She snapped her fingers. No problem. Trent smiled again, a sad old smile. That, he murmured, is a wonderful dream to have. It's not a dream. Ace squeezed his hand. It's true. It works. Perhaps it does. Trench took a deep breath. Of course, there are records of the book on our computer system. Perhaps they would indicate where you could find another copy. But I couldn't possibly look it up for you at the moment. I am much too busy. I'm sure you are. grinned Ace, wishing she could tell the librarian how brave she thought he was. I'm off. See you later, curator. As she left, Trench allowed himself a smile and began to chuckle. Then he put a hand to his chest once more, afraid, and returned to his work. Your pawn is in place. Phaedrus knelt before what had once been his friend.
We know,
hissed the tentacled mass in the metal frame.
We turned a misjudged attack into a subtle advance. We have other advances planned. Everything must be perfect before we strike.
Phaedrus sighed. Must we create so much, invest so much time and plans before the destruction can begin?
Yes,
hissed the fungus.
We have been planning for 1,000,000 years. We are the masters of traps and misdirections, and as yet we are still vulnerable.
What must I do? Asked Phaedrus obediently.
Steal a pewter-space deck and send 3 acolytes into pewter-space. We shall guide them to their prey.
It shall be so. Phaedrus stepped towards the cellar door. Then he halted. A tentacle was gripping lightly at the hem of his smock.
And bring me some blood,
hissed the creature.
I have need of sustenance.
Of course, Phaedrus smiled. There's always some about the place.